Alright, welcome to the stream. Hopefully the sound is good. Won't be able to tell for a couple seconds. But as always, if you are not subscribed, like 97% of my viewers are, subscribe to continue this great content. So this stream is going to be, hold up, stuff I do not like about Dragon's Dogma 1 that could have been fixed. And number 2, maybe, we'll see. So the first thing you'll notice, I just hit load game and I did not have multiple files to choose from. This is probably the biggest file on Dragon's Dogma 1. Alright. So, what's wrong with Dragon's Dogma 1? I'm going to go through it by vocation because that's normally how you relate to things in Dragon's Dogma, either by vocation or by location. So, by vocation, the fighter, and this is going to apply to all red classes actually, not just fighter. The fighter has very low mobility. Fighters, sword and shield assassins, and warriors all cannot do anything when it comes to getting extra distance, extra speed on jumps. You have the one jump, and if something's out of your range, it's out of your range. You gotta switch to another location to try to get to it. And then the other problem is with those three particular vocations: fighter, sword and shield assassin, and warrior. You have no ranged options, and your throw even sucks. So, let's say I was playing a mage. I have an enemy over there. I hit the light attack button, I pull out my staff, a little cursor appears over the enemy, and I fire a bullet directly at that enemy. However, if I were to go into my inventory and take up a tool, let's say a rock, and hold on to it, I do not get that. Instead, I just get a trajectory. Now, if you get skilled enough, you can control that trajectory pretty well. There's going to be situations where, number one, you don't have the time to aim right because you have to aim your character model. Number two, it's not going to be at the correct angle. Like, this is mostly going to be with wyverns, which are things that are floating, and you're just like, I can't hit it. Or if you're trying to hit a wraith with a coin purse of charity, like it's just that auto aim that mages have should have been used for the throw mechanic for fighters, warriors, and honestly should have been used for all the vocations. But those are three vocations that really needed a good throw mechanic. That and the daggerists when they use dazzle, because dazzle is a rare skill that allows a physical vocation to deal magical damage based on their innate character magic, meaning my 446 base magic applies to Dazzle Hold or Dazzle Blast. That should have been also an auto aim skill instead of what it is. And I'll talk more about Dazzle Hold later because I've got more to say about that. But yeah, that's the first thing to talk about when it comes to red vocations in general. Another thing, this one's going to apply to fighter and to magic, Mystic Knight, excuse me. The shield. It took, I think, almost a decade for the whole community to figure out that your shield's knockdown power. So you go in here and you found out your knockdown stagger power is what actually is your ability to block your stability. And of course you get extra stability from different things. But your shield's stagger power and knockdown power are what are the primary causes of your what determines your shield stability there. So your ability to block attacks without staggering. And I don't like having stats that are just you don't see them at all. It's not even like an A to F like in Elden Ring. You get the S scaling and all that. Your attacks don't have scaling on them, so you don't know what your scaling of your attacks are. And so you go to the wiki and look up the skill multiplier data, and you can see, oh yeah, this attack scales at 70%, this attack scales at 110% for warriors. Like, you just don't know. You have to experiment with that. So those are my gripes with fighter. Let's switch over to the next vocation. Yeah. Oh, so this guy retired? No. So Strider. Uh, actually, I don't even know if I need to go for Strider. There's nothing wrong with Strider. I'm pretty sure there's nothing wrong with Strider. Strider's fine. It does have some issues and grievances with having to main. If you were trying to go solo, you would have to main um, Galvanic Razor in order to hit ghosts, especially Phantasms, or Scalding Razor because Phantasms can be hit by lightning. So, but honestly, there's nothing wrong with Strider. Strider is, for all intents and purposes, very very strong, like stupendously strong. It's the only it's the only vocation where I won't have anything to complain about just because of how ridiculously strong it is in all aspects. Mage. Mage is another one that is actually pretty good. It's where's mine? However, I will take the opportunity to complain about ice. Ice damage in Dragon's Dogma is lacking. Um, so your ability to use ice basically depends on stuff like Frigor, which isn't that good of a spell. Frazzle is a terrible spell, by the way. Like your basic ice spell, whereas your basic fire spells, Angle, your basic lightning spell, Levin are both really, really good. Your basic ice spell is just trash. And the really sad part is, it. I think they understood it was trash because the Mystic Knight version of it, the ice counter, is a lot better. So why is Frazzle so bad when ice counter is a much improved version of the same? Frigor is pretty bad, um, but it's your best option if you are a mage. And then when you get to Giselle as a sorcerer, Giselle is actually good. Um, Affinity is okay. The Ice Affinity is probably the second strongest affinity in the game, but when Holy Affinity is just Holy Focus Bow is just so much stronger, there's no point. There's no real point. Like because anything that you're trying to kill with Ice Focus Bow, you're probably better off using Holy Focus Bow. But that's everything I can say about Mage. Mage itself isn't that bad, except for the growth rate. I wish the growth rate wasn't so terrible. Uh, Mage is the only growth rate that actually is the only vocation that actually has a bad growth rate. Like it loses stats compared to other vocations. Warrior. All right. The first thing you'll notice with Warrior, the first thing everybody's going to complain about with Warrior, and these are legitimate complaints, is you only get the three. You only get three um, skills. Why? I have no idea. Because Sorcerer also only has one weapon, but it also gets three skills. Mage also only has one weapon, but it also gets three skills. And then let's go into your skills. Now, when it comes to the mage skills, you'll notice that you learn all your skills for staff and archer staff. So if you were a mage and you transform into a sorcerer, you don't have to relearn focus bolt and levitate and all that. That's not true for fighters and warriors. You have to relearn controlled fall. And on top of that, dire onslaught and takedown, devastate and eviscerate, you have to learn all your core skills all over again. So you have to just spend all that extra discipline on that. Secondly, controlled fall is so trash. This goes back to mobility, which I was talking about earlier. But controlled fall is absolutely garbage. Should not be a thing. Um, Other skills.
Have your pick. Any you like. What will it be today?
Um, I don't know why Pommel Bash cannot be used as a mounted skill because you're already using it as a mounted skill anyway. Like you're bashing the enemy with your pommel when you're mounted on an enemy. So why can't I just use Pommel Bash? Makes sense, right? To hit a little bit faster. Lash needs more damage. Arc needs way more damage. Active Atonement needs to do like 30 times. So right now, I think it does. It's either 4 times or 10 times the damage that you take, and it needs to do like 30 times in order to make it worthwhile. That at that point, it'd be able to one hit KO. It'd be able to one hit KO eliminators at the minimum. Now I know there's tricks where if you get hit by Exekey and you have tenacity or something on, this is I think Gamma came up with this one if I'm not mistaken. Uh, but yeah, if you get hit by that and you have Act active, you can actually one hit death, but usually you're not going to have that kind of setup going. I'm talking about through Grancis, through Bitter Black, all of it. Like trying to use this normally, especially with 3 skill slots, just doesn't work. Now, if you have 6 skill slots, then sure, throwing it on as a counterattack would be cool. But why would you use that as a counterattack when it's so weak and Exit Slash honestly does enough damage? Ladder Blade. This is more about me complaining about mobility. Why do I want this? Why can't I just pole vault with it? Like I don't want to lift my allies up. I want to lift myself up. Um, yeah. For a 10-second charge, this needs to be way stronger. I said that already, but it does. You can compare jumping eminence boosted light attack to arc deliverance, and it's nowhere near the DPS. And you don't have to spend stamina on it, and it's just trash. Like it's just honestly trash to have arc deliverance when you can use um, jumping light attack. That's why most people don't play charge warrior, or if they do, they quit it because it sucks. Yeah, warrior is the vocation
What
with
will
the
it be
most
today?
things wrong
Have
with
your
it.
pick.
I
Any you
hope
like.
I saw some footage from Dragon's Dogma 2 where it looked like warriors gotten even slower and more of your stuff requires stamina. I hope that doesn't mean that the damage is even worse than before. Like, I hope. We'll see. I hope the damage is at least. I don't care if they make it slower and more deliberate and consume stamina. If that damage is much, much higher, they need to increase that damage for Warrior, especially for those charge attacks to make them worth the while. Like, you shouldn't feel like, oh, let me just jump up in the air and smack somebody because my charge attacks just don't do enough damage to be worthwhile. You should feel like, okay, once I have an opening, I can use my charge attack because it's going to do the most damage if I have an opening. Oh, and on top of that, it's very, very hard to hit a weak spot when forced to stand static. Where's Glaze at? Here it is. When you're forced to stand static, it's almost impossible to hit a weak spot with Lash. And then trying to hit a weak spot with Arc, like imagine trying to hit a Drake with Arc, like it's really, really rough. You can't even charge Arc during a Drake's down period unless you have a Torpor active. So that's just something to
Pick.
think
Have your
about.
pick. Come again. Come again.
Because of how slow those attacks are, you're never going to hit a weak spot. So Maybe they should always just count as hitting a weak spot, or just cancel out the armor of the body part that they're hitting. All right, so enough about that. Now about Ranger. Rangers. Ranger's biggest deal is that a lot of its skills just go unused, and Assassin's going to have the same problem. But a
Bob,
lot of its skills
Bill,
just go
Dale,
unused
how's your
because
pick?
Tenfold
A new
Flurry
line.
exists, and the Cat Shot exists for
What will it
some
be
stuff,
today? What will it be today?
and then it's okay. Let's talk about Dazzle Hold and Dazzle Blast because they're mostly applicable to Ranger. Dazzle Blast, if you don't know, if you hit the enemy with the projectile, your base magic will apply to that projectile. So you can hit a ghost with it, per se, right? My 446 magic versus a ghost 200 magic defense if it's the basic phantom, or 250 for phantasms, I think. And then it goes up and up for wraiths and specters. But that would actually apply damage. Um, and that can be boosted by different means and such. However, if you ever try to actually aim this thing, it's even worse than aiming your thrown items, which is why I'm surprised. Why didn't this just have the same staff auto aim that mages get? Like it really should have. On top of that, why does only the projectile work? If it wasn't just the projectile, if it was the explosions as well, then it would be a lot more reliable. You probably wouldn't even need to auto aim if the explosions worked. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on Dazzle Blast. Um, I hope something of that nature comes back, but I hope they just add the magic damage to the entire attack, and then give it some better auto aim, and just give thrown items in general better auto aim. Um, the problem with Deathly Arrow is, why would you use this? Well, you normally use it for stagger, but still, Tenfold Flurry. Um, Body Binder. I wish I knew more about it. Body Binder, to my understanding, doesn't work on things that are medium sized or bigger. Like you couldn't hit a Garm with it and expect that Garm to go down. You couldn't hit an Ogre with it and expect that Ogre to be pinned. But then again, I don't play enough Rangers, so maybe I'm completely wrong there. If you could take a Garm down with it, that'd be sick. Crippling Arrow. I think the problem is it just doesn't do enough. Not in terms of damage, but in terms of weakening. Like it, I think it lets you deal like double the damage to the affected body part, but it's really hard to tell what body part is affected, or if it's the whole enemy, because it's not very clear. Some enemies have different zones. Like enemies have different zones, or at least if you've been to. And again, this is one of those vague things that we're not really told as the players. Yeah, enemies have different zones, um, but sometimes it's not clear where those zones begin and end. And if you hit that body part with crippling arrow, you could just you just have to keep hitting as close to that body part as possible, because you just don't know how big that zone actually is. Um, with this, um, I don't know the first thing about this attack. I'm gonna keep it real with you. I've never used it. um, I think I looked it up on Wiki once, and it was just like it does what it says, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of trash. And the other problem is that it's basically, how is it different from Dazzle, which I'm already going to be using, because I have no options on daggers. Like I have Reset, which I could use. I have Kisses, which I am going to use. I have Trigger, which I am going to use. And then I have Biting Wind, which I'm not going to use. And I have Dazzle. So I'm probably going to end up using Dazzle just because of the mere fact that it could theoretically be used for Ghosts. It's basically Dagger versus Reset. So why would I ever use Flying then? Meteor Shot. I think this is actually weaker than the Assassin version of it. The Comet. Or no, Meteor is Comet. The Lyncian one. Which is weird because Assassin doesn't normally get good stuff, but assassin to get a better version of meteor shot. Spiral arrow. As much as I want to complain about spiral arrow and whirlwind arrow, corkscrew arrow, I think it's this upgrade. Um, it does work, especially with petrifying arrows. And if you hit a Garm with it, that Garm's probably going to die. So it does have a niche. Great gamble, I have no complaints about. It has its own build that can one shot a condemned score Cyclops, so I
What will
have
it
no
be
complaints
today?
about it.
Have your pick. Any you like.
Yeah, you kind of have to dig to be upset with Ranger because Ranger does a lot of stuff right. It's really just the dagger stuff. Like I don't like that toss and trigger. You have to hit with the first hit in order to get the blast. I wish you could just press through it without having to actually make contact with the first uppercut with a dagger to use the gunpowder charge on toss and trigger.
Have your pick. Any you like. Have your pick. Any you like.
All right, we're
What
gonna
will it
go
be
over a
today?
lot of stuff with sorcerer here.
What will it be? Have your come again.
All right, so
Pray. Have your pick.
sorcerer has a ton of problems.
What will it be today?
Not as many as warriors, but enough. We already talked about frazzle sucking, but frazzle's not warrior's only problem. Well, not sorcerer's only problem. Who uses this? Around the user, most of the things that want to use spells against you are going to be either A, keeping a distance, or B, flying, like Licious and Whites and stuff. You're not blinding foes. Again, blinding is not good enough. That's more of a knock on the debilitation than the actual spell. Like, blinding's not good enough. Silence isn't good enough. It doesn't even apply to that many things. I wonder if you could silence Diamond. I don't think you can. Like, the other problem is anything that's like a big enough story boss, you can't even silence in the first place. Like, a lot of things are just straight up immune to debilitations, and I get it. But if you're building around debilitations, why would you even bother? Lassitude, Magical Fog, Torpor. Okay, I have rusted weapons for that. Why would I even bother? Is it around me again? Designate location. Well, at least that's assigned designate location. Um, this actually applies to Mage as well, but Fire Boon is trash. Holy Boon is not. Wow, excuse me. I was tripping for a second. Dark Boon is trash. All right, and I'm talking mostly about the bolt versions of them. The focus bolts and magic bolts from Dark Boon and Fire Boon are very very bad. Thunder Boon is also pretty mid as well. Holy is so OP that even Ice, which is the second best, is just nowhere near as good as Holy. So you'd always just straight up use Holy as your focus bolt if you're going to use a focus bolt. Bleed is good. I wish all of the meteors hit, but that would probably be OP as heck. But yeah, I wish all the meteors actually hit something no matter what. Like, if there's an enemy alive, find that enemy and hit it. Matter of fact, I'll stand on that. Even if it's OP, like, why do it? Hit the enemy, please. Giselle's good. Fulmination. I don't like Fulmination because it requires party members. So why would I use it solo? And you can say the same thing for Brontide. Um, I don't like Brontide because it's if I get staggered, it just cancels my spell that I just spent time casting. Sayism is absolute hot garbage. There's one enemy in the game that it kind of sort of not really makes sense against, and that's Erdy. And it's not even that it makes sense because you should just be using Holy Focus Bolt at that point. But at least it can hit Dragon with all of the rocks. Um, Daimon, the other thing that's really weak to Holy, is way too fast to be hit by this. Um, whether it's the first version, the second. If it's the second version, you're going to get hit with a big old not conf. What's the name of that spell? Um, it's up here. Combustion. He's going to just hit you with high combustion, and you're going to look stupid. Um, or he's going to hit you with Levin. He's going to hit you with a spell. All right. You don't have time against second version Daimon to cast this. First version Daimon, you definitely don't have time because he's going to be flying all over the place. You're never going to cast this. Um, Cursed Dragon, you're going to die. If you do manage to cast it, which I have actually managed to cast against Cursed Dragon before, you're going to wish you just cast Belide, even if Belide only hits it twice. You're just going to wish you cast Belide. Why? Because Belide actually can set the thing on fire and does just as much damage, and you don't have to worry about positioning at all. If the Cursed Dragon decides it wants to run around or fly away or something, like, you're still going to do just as much damage with Belide. You're not going to do anywhere near as much damage with Seism, unless you get perfect aim. Like if you're, it is a pattern almost. Like look it up on Wiki for how that stuff works. It's like a zone for each explosion eruption of rocks, but basically, um, it's somewhat predictable, but not completely predictable. Um, you're just not going to want to use this against anything in the game, and that's the bottom line. Sayism's trash. They need to fix it. Maelstrom, Maelstrom, I love and I hate. I don't want to ever see it on the pond that I'm renting. Obviously, I don't want to see Sayism because it's trash. I don't want to ever see Maelstrom because unless I'm about to fight a dragon, because it blinds you, and I would expect that a tornado would whip up dust and blind you. So I'm not mad at that. That is immersive, but at the same time, I don't want to have to deal with that problem. The other problem with Maelstrom, which I enjoy this part of Maelstrom, is when an enemy casts it, whether it's an enemy corrupted pawn or it's an enemy bandit, you just die. If it's close enough to you and you get sucked into it, that's a good game, bro. Like, unless you have a wake stone on you, you're just dead. So I do enjoy that about Maelstrom. I don't hate that. I know a lot of people it frustrates them when they don't get to the pawn that's trying to cast on time or they didn't realize that it was happening. But me, I absolutely enjoy it. If you give a enemy enough time to cast this spell, you deserve to die. So that's just something that you have to take into account that sometimes Maelstrom's going to happen. It would have been impressive if it was like Dark Bishop who can like instantly cast really strong spells, and he used Maelstrom against you. That would be OP. But for the enemies that can cast it, this is absolutely fine because it takes them all a million years to cast it. X key is a cute spell. Petrifaction is okay. You can cast it against things, especially if you build towards it. Garms and stuff, you can expect it to kill those things that are actually weak to it. Miasma, I'm not going to talk about Miasma because it's strong and I like it. It's a good way to actually get torpor onto enemies or silence on the enemies by using those weapons that do things like that. And it does good neutral magic damage as well, which is important against stiff stuff like Hydras that are resistant to all forms of magic, but they take regular damage from neutral magic. Void Spell, I don't like that you have to run a sorcerer with Void Spell in order to get rid of Petrifaction. I wish it was just a part of Halidom on Mage. But at the same time, I get it. You don't want to have one. Well, I don't even get it because, like, mages are already just weaker versions of sorcerers, much weaker. So why, oh why, can't they at least have the ability to clear all statuses? That's my thing. Oh, speaking of, I missed a complaint about mage. I didn't miss a complaint about mage. Anodyne. Let me finish out sorcerer, then we'll go back to mage. Sorcerer, necromancy. Why is it just better? And when I say better magic agent, I mean it's a better version of magic agent, sure, but it's still trash. Like Give me some sort of like just regular dark damage that isn't weird. That's what I would ask. Like I don't want weird dark damage, and that applies to all vocations. That applies to um, Magic Archer, which has Sacrifice, which again you cannot use without a sacrificial pawn, so you're not going to use it most of the time. Um, this one, High Necromancy, which is very slow to cast, and then when you cast it, it's basically like kind of garbage because it's magic agent. Um, and then it doesn't even drag up big enemies. It only works on small enemies as far as getting them to lift up into the air and explode. Um, High Maelstrom is good dark damage, but it's the only case of good dark damage, and that's sad. Grapnel is okay dark damage. It does crit a lot, which if you have the high base magic is going to do good damage for you. But Grapnel is also very low on base power, so it's like at least it exists because they were. It seems like they could have not had Grapnel on mage, and we would have been like, oh well, it's a mage, it's a holy guy. Well, you'd expect them not to have dark damage, so it's good that we had dark damage on mage. Grapnel is probably the best mage spell overall. Like if you have a team of mages and they're all using Grapnel, you can even slow down Daimon. So I'm just saying, Grapnel is not a bad skill, but in terms of dark damage, it doesn't deal a lot of it. It's mostly for the slowing part of it. All right,
What will it be
let's talk
today?
about Anodyne. Anodyne, and let's talk about why I hate Anodyne on pawns. When you put Anodyne on your pawn, you're probably going to end up putting high or grand Anodyne on them. This is why that's a problem. Pawns don't have any clue when to stop casting a spell. They can be about to eat a big old slash from a living armor, and they're still going to try to complete casting the highest level of the spell that they have. So if you give your pawn high anodyne, they're always going to try to cast high anodyne. They're never going to stop short and just cast regular anodyne. I hate that so much because you just end up never getting healed at some points. Like if there's a lot of enemies, your mage is just going to stand there and just like, I'm trying to cast, oh I can't cast. I'm trying to cast, oh I can't cast. You're just never going to get healed. So I hate anodyne on pawns for that reason. If you're going to put anodyne on your pawn, make sure that's just basic anodyne. But if you get high anodyne on your pawn, and another time waster is magic agent. Don't put magic agent on your pawn. It's a waste of time. So don't equip your pawn with magic agent. Don't equip your pawn with high anodyne. You do those two things, you're golden. The reason you don't want magic agents is because they're just going to waste time casting that as well. And if they fail to cast it, which is, they probably shouldn't because it's pretty fast, but if they fail to cast it, they'll try again. Same thing with high anodyne. Just go with the regular anodyne so you get more often heals. It's better to have more consistent healing than stronger healing. The that's the point. You want more consistent healing. You don't necessarily want stronger healing. Um, and then if you need stronger healing because you're going to bitter black or something, give them the ring for grand anodyne. And guess what? You skip high anodyne, you go straight to grand, and grand anodyne is so much better because it keeps healing them like way after you leave the sigil. All right. So you should just have anodyne and grand anodyne. No high anodyne. Never unlock high anodyne on your pawn. Um, what else? Yeah, I wish they fixed that. I wish pawns could tell by the threat level that hey, if I'm going to get hit, maybe in the next 3 seconds, I should just short cast my spell. Like, if it's coming, if there's an incoming attack, I'm being targeted, I probably should short cast my spell. Matter of fact, yeah, not even if I'm going to be hit because that AI could be very, very weird. Just if I'm currently being targeted by an enemy and the game can tell if it's targeting, the game knows if it's targeting a pawn. Short cast a spell. Just throw out what you got. That's one quality of life fix they should definitely implement in Dragon's Dogma 2. And this video is not supposed to be, hey, here's my ideas for Dragon's Dogma 2, but that's honestly, they need to fix that. That is a big
What will it be
problem in
today?
Dragon's Dogma 1.
Have your pick. Any you like. What
Um,
will it be today? Have your pick. Any you
there's a
like.
bunch of big problems, but I would say my biggest three problems that I did not like about Dragon's Dogma 1. Number two, the lack of separate save files so that you could have more than one character. Number two, warriors in general. Like, warriors, red vocations, warriors not having three. Like, I think red vocations should just be a category of things I don't like. And I like red vocations, but all the problems with red vocations: lack of mobility, warriors only having three skills, you not knowing what shield stability is until 10 years later after hours and hours of research. Um, Shoot, all the things that are wrong with red vocations. Like that's the second problem. Like they need to rebalance red vocations a lot. Um, and then number three would be the way pawns cast spells. Um, they fix those three things. It's already a much better game than Dragon's Dogma 1. All right, what's next? MK.
Have your pick. Any you like. What will it be today? Have your pick. Any you like. What will it be today?
Uh, Here's the thing. MK is really good. MK is really good. Uh, I hate. I want to say hate. So with Mystic Magic Archer, you have two dagger spells. You have Ascension, which is holy, and you have Immolation, which is fire. You also have non-damage dealing ones like Shadow Snare, but I'm talking about damage dealing ones. So you have Ascension and you have Immolation. Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding my Force Hatchet. There it is.
What will it be today?
Let's probably put some clothes on. So
What will it be? Have your pick. Come on.
with Mystic Knight, you also have two sword spells. Well, besides Cannon, you have Fury, Holy Fury, which is holy, and you have Stone Jungle, which is fire. I hate that so many times it just comes down to holy and fire. Like, why couldn't we get something different? And that's going to also wrap up into my complaint about Magic Archer not having dark damage, by the way. um, because why didn't why did they get dagger spells that are damage dealing but only fire and holy when Magic Mystic Knight already had fire and holy? So that's one of my problems. One of my problems again, hidden stats. So you cast Blessed Riposte. It gives you an ability that when you counter an enemy, perfect block them, you get these balls of light that come out, right? Okay, cool. What you don't know is that you also get extra frames on your perfect block. So it makes it easier for you to perfect block. However, it's not like a clear cut plus 5 frames, plus 10 frames. If I'm not mistaken, the electric one gets plus 10 frames, and then holy and something else get plus 5. And like they depend on the element that you're using, it depends on the frames that you're getting. So, why am I saying all that? Because the game gives you zero indication of this. You have zero indication that you're getting extra frames. So, you're just out here like, oh wow, it's so much easier to block when I do this. You feel it, but you don't see it. There's no indication. So that's my main problem with Mystic Knight. Another problem I have, and this is kind of a problem with the Warriors jumping light, which gives you a little bit of extra height and distance on your jumps. I don't like that Sky Rapture doesn't allow you to grapple not only enemies but edges like ledges and stuff. Like I should be able to Sky Rapture and just basically jump from there and get to the top of this here with a sword or mace, but you cannot do that. So that's what I don't like about Sky Rapture. Um, but that's pretty much all I don't like about Mystic Knight. Mystic Knight is actually a pretty good vocation.
Bonds are. They are. Have your pick. Any you like.
All right. So most people's least favorite vocation is mage, and okay, I get it. My least favorite vocation is assassin, and the reason is multifold. Um, Number one, I feel like it's lazy. Um, assassin should have just gotten a different type of weapon, its own unique weapon, like the other two hybrids did. But instead, it got four weapons, and in reality, it got three. Why am I saying it got three weapons, not four? Well, your shield is absolute garbage.
Have your pick. Any you like. What will it
I
be
was forgetting
today?
the door close. All
What
right,
will it be today? Have your pick. What will it be today?
trash. Okay-ish if you get a counter hit. Trash, trash. You get one skill on shield, and you have to give up the entirety of your range in order to do that. And we already talked about how bad um, reds, including shield classes, are at range. So why would you give up your ranged bow? So basically, you don't have four options for weapons. You have two. You can go sword and bow, which basically means you can use force hatchet, which is the only real reason you'd use a sword, or you could go dagger and bow. Okay, there is another reason you'd go sword and bow, and that is against phantasms in the early game because of galvanic razors being an electric weapon. It just makes more sense to have all mace as a sword um, against phantasms. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where you have Ascalon and Curse Light, and you're just not going to care about sword anymore. Um, daggers. Daggers are the better weapon, but look at what you're able to use. Hold on, let me go
What
to
will it
learn.
be today?
Learn skills. All right, antler toss. Really, really strong skill. This is applicable to fighter as well. And Mystic Knight. Full Moon Slash, Compass Slash. Oh, let's talk about scaling for a second. This isn't just on Assassin. This is on all classes. I talked about it a little bit, but the fact that the higher level skill has a lower scaling hurts it in a lot of cases. So Compass Slash has better scaling per hit than Full Moon Slash. And the same is true for I'm not a fighter right now, but the same is very true for actually Deadly Gouge. Deadly Gouge is the same way. And then if you're playing fighter, the same is true for what's the fighter's ultimate skill? Legion's Bite and Dragon's Maw. Dragon's Maw has lower scaling than Legion's Bite. So why did I say all that? Well, because you end up depending on what you're trying to do, you might not want to actually upgrade these types of skills that have lower scaling, but you have no idea because there's nothing. There's not a hey scaling drops down on a. There's nothing explaining that your scaling drops. You have to look that up on a wiki. So one thing I would ask is that scaling would stay the same on these types of attacks. Like if you're going to add extra slashes, don't penalize me for it. Maybe they felt that it was more balanced that way, but I'm not asking for a balanced attack that's weaker in some situations. Like if I was barely breaking their defense, then it's going to be a weaker. It's not going to be balanced. It's going to be weaker. All right. So let's look at the Intimate Gambit, and you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the text block that this is an assassin only skill. If I go back up to Antler Toss, it's not as good as Antler Toss. Great Windmill, not as good as Antler Toss. There's no reason to use it. Clairvoyance. Honestly, this should have been a fighter, and this should have been an all-rounder skill. Not Clairvoyance, excuse me. Dire Gouge should have been an all-rounder skill. I have no idea why a fighter just doesn't have the mental aptitude to plunge his sword into an enemy, but he doesn't, I guess. So, assassins do. It's okay. It gives you some type of answer to kisses, but at the same time, do you really care? Clairvoyance is a worse version of hindsight strike, honestly. Especially the fact that it does an upgrade makes it way worse than hindsight strike because hindsight strike does a ton of scaling and a ton of damage. It's like 200% scaling, whereas clairvoyance does actually pretty weak scaling overall. Not only that, clairvoyance can fail. Well, hindsight doesn't fail. It like you can miss the counter hit frames and you won't get the extra damage, but you'll still do damage. And you can still use it somewhat as a mobility move. This is just trash. And then you compare the sword skills to the dagger skills, which are actually pretty good. Master of kills are really good. Escape onslaughts